Hi folks, welcome back to Pop Pop Fizzle. I'm Jeff, and today we're going to do something a little bit different. I hope you bear with me. We're not a news channel. We don't do entertainment news. We do fun pop culture stuff. We watch trailers. We review movies, not because we're critics, but because we like to talk about those things. We don't take ourselves very seriously. And normally, my wife Heidi would be sitting next to me. She's had to work tonight, so unfortunately she can't be with me for this. But a couple of things happened today. As most of you know, SDCC is going on, San Diego Comic-Con. Lots of new things dropped during San Diego Comic-Con, so I spent most of last night editing reactions to trailers and things, and spent most of today getting them uploaded, and there'll be plenty more of those to come. That's not what this is, though. What I wanted to do was talk briefly about a couple of things that happened today that I thought were noteworthy, and I just wanted to go over them briefly and just start some dialogue, start some discussion. As always, anytime we discuss things in the comments below, we ask, because we're a family-friendly channel, that you keep the language clean, you express yourself without resorting to those kind of things. And you guys have been so good about that anyway. So, but sometimes when we're upset or when we're angry or whatever, those things want to come out. So let's try to watch that when we discuss. But the first thing that I want to talk about is the James Gunn situation. So if you follow entertainment news, you know that James Gunn was removed from Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 today, fired basically, and Disney broke off their relationship with him because of tweets that were made several years ago, and in fact tweets that he himself had apologized for in 2012, is my understanding of that. I have read some of the tweets. I haven't read them all. I know they're floating around out there, and I feel like probably some of this came from just a problem in our society as a whole right now, which is that if we can't pick apart someone's argument today, if we can't deal with who they are, we dig in deeper, we dig into the past, we dig into things. And the bottom line is, for me, now this is just my opinion, right? This is not me saying that this is how you should think. This is me giving you my opinion so that we can start this dialogue. I feel like for someone to admit, listen, I did a boneheaded thing, and admit that I'm trying to grow as a person, I'm trying to make myself better, and so I've disavowed those things, and I have apologized for those things, and I've set a new course for myself, then it's really harsh for those things to come back and cost them a job, cost them their livelihood. Now, there's a couple of ways to look at this. One is the way I tend to look at everything first, which is through my own lens, which is to say, if I were in their shoes, how would I want to be judged? And I'll be honest with you, and hopefully you'll be honest with yourself, enough to know that most of us have things in our past that we're not proud of. We've either said something to someone that we regret, we've done something that we regret, maybe we had a youthful run-in with the law somewhere down the line, maybe we let somebody down that we loved and didn't want to, maybe we shot our mouth off on Twitter or Facebook when we shouldn't have. Whatever the case is, I think most of us have at least one thing, if not multiple things, that we can point back to in our lives and say, man, I didn't really like that guy. I'm so glad I'm not him anymore. I'm so glad I've progressed to where I am now. From everything that I can see, that's where James Gunn was sitting. Now, I don't want you to get to think that I'm a James Gunn apologist. I'm not. I disagree with a lot of things that James Gunn says on a regular basis anyway. This is not that. This, to me, is falls clearly into an area where we need to talk about what we forgive and what we get past, because I think we all have things that we need to be forgiven of. And for someone like James Gunn to have divorced himself from who he was, and right or wrong, whether you like the things that he tweets or not, whether you wish he wasn't so political or you wish he was more political and took more of a stand, or wherever you fall in that continuum, he makes quality films that are fun, and he's put his heart and soul clearly into the first two Guardians films, and he loses all that now. Because of things that were said years ago. Things that, let's be honest, Disney had to know about. Marvel had to know about when they signed him on, because he had already apologized for these things. He had already made these things public. So I begin to ask myself the question, is it fair? Is it right that we hold someone accountable for who they used to be instead of who they are today? I also think that it's a bit of a double-edged sword because, I think you go back to the Golden Rule, and every culture has their version of it, but you look at the Golden Rule and you realize that, there have been times when James Gunn himself has pointed at other people and said they shouldn't get away with that, they shouldn't do whatever. And in some cases, maybe those people had already apologized or already tried to make it right, and they're holding them accountable still. And I think we fall into that area of where we should judge by the measure that we want to be judged by. Because that axe tends to swing both ways. And I think if we're not careful with each other, if we're not gracious to each other to extend a little bit of compassion, extend a little bit of grace, and understand that sometimes we put our foot in our mouth, sometimes we say the wrong thing because we're tired, because we're angry, because we're in some Hollywood notables cases drunk. And I'm not saying that any of those things excuse what was said, but they should at least be a framework around what was said to understand that in the day-to-day, that's not necessarily who they are. I don't think any person who's ever had too much to drink wants to be judged on how they acted in that one moment where they weren't really functioning properly. Now, obviously the case can be made, so don't drink to where you're not functioning properly. Don't do the sorts of things that put you into those situations. But in this case, what James Gunn contends, and I say contends because he's not trying to excuse his behavior. Nothing I read, at least in his tweets from last night, suggests that he's trying to excuse what he said or did all those years ago. But what he is saying is that it was an attempt to be provocative. It was an attempt to be funny. It was an attempt to get a shocked reaction from the people reading his Twitter feed. And we all know that comedians tend to do that sort of thing. Now, he's a comedic director. All of his movies, even the horror movies that he's done, tend to have a heavy comedic element to them. So the fact that he was trying to be shocking shouldn't be that surprising. But I made this comment today via Twitter in a conversation with some other YouTubers, and it was, that if you looked at any popular comedian, you would find jokes in their set from 2 years ago, let alone 10 years ago, that they would be crucified for if they made them today. Because our perspective on certain things has changed. Shocking humor can cross a line for some people. A good example of that would be Deadpool. I loved the Deadpool movie. I had a great time in it, but there are some people that were offended by it. There are some people that thought it wasn't offensive enough, that it should have gone raunchier, right? So there's a spectrum, there's a continuum of these sorts of things. And what I worry about is just sort of a societal worry, is that we focus so much on one thing, on moving everything one direction, that we forget that some things are said in jest, some things are said to be shocking, not because they're meant, not because anyone meant what they said. There are comedians that say stuff from the stage every day that are highly offensive, but they don't mean them. It's just a joke. They're just trying to get a certain reaction, or they're trying to set up another joke that's coming. And if they were held to those same standards, that would be a problem. Now, that said, as a citizen of the United States, I believe in freedom of association. I believe that Disney has the right to fire whoever they want to fire. If they feel like James Gunn doesn't represent them well, then they have the right to do it. I think it's a dumb decision. I don't think it's the best decision, but they certainly have the right to do it, and I don't deny that. I think also, it's a little bit hypocritical because I really do think they had to have known these things when they hired him. It's just that now suddenly the heat is turned up. And I would have respected Disney much more for saying, you know what, we knew about these things, but he asked forgiveness in 2012. He's making himself into a better man, and we're going to stand by that and give him the opportunity to show himself as a good man. We believe he has, right? I would have respected that response much more than just firing him. Now, that said, who knows what the fate of Guardians of the Galaxy 3 is going to be. It's a movie. It's not that important. But the way we treat each other is important. The way we extend grace and compassion on one another is important. And you'll always see me argue for that. I don't care what side of the political spectrum you're on. I don't care how you identify along political lines. This channel's not about those things. But it is about community. And it is about sort of the love of pop culture that brings us together. So in an event like SDCC, where all these people are coming together to celebrate pop culture, to celebrate comics and films and television and cosplay and all sorts of things, that sometimes these fandoms can be so bitterly divided about things, and sometimes we can turn our back very easily on someone who doesn't live up to what we think they should, when the bottom line is we probably don't live up to the example that other people think that we should either. I tend to go into any situation thinking that I'm the worst, and if I approach it that there's nothing that they've probably said that's not as bad as something I've thought, and I just had the intelligence or the wherewithal in that moment to not say it out loud, doesn't make me better. It just means that, I turned off an inappropriate comment or a joke that might have offended someone, or a comment that I wasn't sure how it was going to land or if I was going to be understood, and so I didn't want to be misunderstood, so I kept it to myself. These things happen, and from what I can see, even though, like I said, I disagree with James Gunn on plenty of things, that as far as I can see, he was trying to be a better man, and today it feels like he got punished for the man he used to be. And since there was no crime involved, I'm not sure that was fair. Those are my 2 cents. Jump into the comments below and let me know what you think. It's a touchy subject. I get it. Maybe you're like, no, he should go down. He shouldn't have any more opportunities in Hollywood. Maybe you're of that opinion. That's fine. I'm not convinced of that, but talk to me. Let me know. Maybe you think that this whole thing was a witch hunt and got blown out of proportion and whatever, and Disney should have never fired him. Let me know that too. But that was the first thing that I wanted to bring to mind. The other thing is a more somber sort of thing. Heidi and I started this channel because we love pop culture, we love movies, we love comics, we love all of those things. And initially, when we talked about the channel, we wanted to do some comic book based things. And we ended up not doing that, at least so far, because we wanted to get our legs under us. We wanted to figure out YouTube, and we wanted to figure out how to get people on board and watching us and build a little bit of community before we started trying new things and testing out new things. And so we eventually want to get to comics. But I've been a comic book reader since I was 11 years old. If not younger, probably younger, but 11 is when I first remember buying comics for myself, saving up my money and buying them. So I've been reading comics for a long time. And when we started this channel, I said, there are so many other channels that do comics well, that I don't want to try to be too serious about it. I just want to talk about what I like and what I don't, which is the same thing we do about movies, the same thing we do about trailers. It's just us being goofy and talking with you and being a part of the community with you. That's it. Not taking ourselves too seriously. But there are great sources on YouTube for comics. We love Comic Pop, our friends over there. Hi, Comic Pop. We love other channels that are doing great things. Variant Comics is a great channel as well. Condolences to Eris for losing his father this last week. Great source, though, for comic book information, and Eris has a fun show, right? One of those shows, though, that we've watched over the years was Heroes on Collider, and they lost their lovable giant Jon Schnepp today. Now, actually, I think it was yesterday, and they just announced it today, but I don't want to pretend like I knew Jon Schnepp at all. I didn't. I felt like I did because I watched Collider so much. Saw Jon on Movie Talk, saw Jon on Heroes, saw him on Nightmares. So, like with anybody that you see in front of you, often maybe you feel like you've gotten to know Heidi and I if you watch this channel regularly. It's that sort of feeling. I would watch Jon Schnepp. I would listen to him. I would laugh with him. He could be hilarious. He knew his comic book stuff backward and forward. He could, his knowledge of artists and writers and runs of comics far surpassed mine. And I would just sit and enjoy listening to Jon and whatever guests he had on the show talk about comics. And I'd put it on while I was doing other things, and I would just eat it up, right? So hearing the news that Jon had passed was a sad moment for me. I remember as a kid the day John Lennon died. Wasn't a big Beatles fan before then. Didn't know much about him, so it didn't hit me. But I've lost people that I admired from afar, and it always hits you in a certain way. But the reason I want to talk about Jon Schnepp right now, and the reason I wanted to call this to your attention, is that not only was Jon so good at what he did, he was a cartoonist, an animator. He had directed documentaries. And just his input on Collider, both his movie knowledge and his comic book knowledge, and really just sort of, he was a guy that moved in a lot of circles, and just a creative guy. I know he was working on some comic book stuff, graphic novel stuff at one point, and he'd done some voice acting on shows that he had worked on, so he really had his hands in everywhere. So whether or not you were a fan of Jon Schnepp, whether or not you watched Collider, Heroes, and any of the other shows that Jon was involved with over there, the community as a whole really lost something today with Jon. Jon called comic book nerds sweaties. He would talk about getting sweaty about something, getting really into the nitty-gritty of that fandom of, knowing little details about things. That was getting sweaty to him. And I remember hearing that term for the first time when I was watching Jon on a show and going, that makes a lot of sense. That's a good term. That term makes sense. I'm a sweaty sometimes about that stuff. Somebody will be talking about a movie and this thing happened, and I'll be like, well, in the comics it happened this way, and that's me getting sweaty about that stuff. I just admired him from afar. And, Jon and I are probably very different people. Didn't know the man, don't want to pretend that I do. And listen, our channel is not monetized, so please don't think that I'm bringing up Jon to get views or anything like that. What I want is for you to reach out to Jon's partner, Holly, and to the Collider people. And so the reason we're talking about this is because his passing impacts the greater sort of nerd community. So they are raising funds for Jon, medical bills. They were already raising funds for before he passed. And now that he's passed, I'm sure they still have all those things plus funeral expenses and other things. And I know that not all of us are in a place where we can help with those sorts of things. I know that times are hard for some people, and there are weeks that I don't have 2 cents to rub together. So I'm not trying to put any pressure on you at all. But what I am saying is, if you find yourself blessed this week with a little bit extra, maybe consider donating to this worthy cause to help take care of Jon's medical bills and possibly even his funeral. And I'll post the link below for that. And Collider is streaming right now. It's already happening. They're live streaming, I think, for 24 hours. Jon's shows and his work with Collider, so that people can jump on and kind of share their memories of Jon. So whether you knew Jon or not, or whether you followed Jon on Collider, hop over there. Don't mention our channel. We're not trying to get views. We're not trying to get people jumping onto our channel or anything. Don't tell them that you heard about it here. Just jump over there. Send your condolences. If you got a few bucks to rub together, use the link for helping with those expenses or whatever. Really, it's just because Jon's impact in the world of nerds and comic geeks and film buffs and all of that, he had an impact. And from afar, Heidi and I really appreciated what he brought to this this sort of little community that we're all a part of. So if you will help and you can help, then please jump down into the description to that link and do so. And I'll have the link to the live 24-hour, or not live, but it's a 24-hour feed that's playing live on Collider's channel. They're taking a break from SDCC coverage in order, in honor of him, and they're just sharing this live stream of his work and the things that were near and dear to his heart. So be sure and check that out, and I'm sure there are numerous projects that Jon was a part of. I know he, of course, his documentary was the death of Superman Returns, or Superman Lives, sorry. And I know he directed a segment of one of the ABCs of Death, I'm not sure which one. So he's got work out there that you can check out. So Google him, check him out, and maybe if you want to honor him this weekend, watch something that he had a hand in, and if nothing else, hop over to Collider and watch their live feed and just give your condolences to them. It's rough. We just lost my aunt about a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago. Anytime you suffer a loss like that, it's difficult, and the Collider crew seems like a pretty solid family, so I know they're hurting. And of course his partner Holly, I think they were together like 16, 17 years, so I know she's hurting and his family's hurting, so just offer your well wishes over there. And then back to the James Gunn thing, just jump down to the comments below and we'll have some discussion there. Let me know what you think about all that. There'll be more stuff from SDCC coming this week. I'm going to film some more stuff tonight. I'm going to be doing a movie review as well. We'll get stuff up. It's kind of crazy around here this week because so many things are dropping. We're playing catch up on a lot of things. So bear with us on that. But we will be back with more content for you. We love the fact that you jump in and watch us talk about whatever it is we're talking about, whether we're doing a trailer reaction or a movie review, or whether we're doing an unboxing, and we've got one of those coming up soon. We just love that you have made yourself a part of our little family here. So thank you for that. And please make yourself known over on the Collider link as they're playing Jon and his shows, and let them know that you send your condolences, and if you can help the family out with those medical expenses, be sure and click that link and do so. Okay folks, until next time, be good to one another, and we'll see you soon.